Hello, everyone. Welcome into the Hog Zone with Locked On Razorbacks. We have a big game against Arkansas and Ole Miss that we need to break down, and this is going to be a crazy game that it was. I mean, the Hogs were kind of in it for most of it, and then there was that fumble late in the game. But really, this was also on the defense. The defense gave up quite a bit of yards in this one, and we're going to bring in John Nabors here in just a minute. He was at Mississippi with this and saw the game and was also able to kind of feel some of the tension there between the Razorbacks and the Rebels. But like I mentioned, the defense gave up quite a bit in this one with over 475 total yards of offense. 350 of those came from the air, and it was the new quarterback in for the Rebels in Trinidad Chambliss as he came in, got a couple touchdowns as well, and even did quite a bit on the ground with 162 yards for him and 2 rushing touchdowns there. So this one, pretty bitter taste here for the Hogs, especially when it is against the Rebels. Now, this one also saw some positive things from the offense with Taylen Green doing a great job in the air with a little over 300 passing yards and 111 yards on the ground himself, leading the game, leading his team once again there like he did in the game last week. He also got a rushing touchdown. His longest, though, on the ground, he did 20 yards, and he was 22 for 35 in his completion with a passing touchdown as well. So plenty more for us to kind of break down in this one. The run game was there pretty much most of the night, but not as much as you wanted it to be, especially because Sam Pittman really wanted to get those legs moving. But he did get Mike Washington moving there. And like I mentioned earlier, John Nabors, he is on the ground in Oxford. John, you were there. You saw it. Just tell me, how are you feeling? How are the Hogs feeling after this one?
Well, I can tell you it was a pretty classic Arkansas-Ole Miss game and pretty classic way for Arkansas to lose a game. It's another one-possession loss for Sam Pittman. Arkansas was in a position to win. I know that they obviously gave up as many yards and points, it felt like, defensively, really couldn't get any stops. But they were still had a chance to win it at the very end. And I firmly believe that the only way that they could have lost that game at the end is if they did exactly what they did, turning it over. But I had no doubt that they were going to go into the end zone. I think that they were going to win the game. But for that to be the one turnover that you get, it's pretty devastating. But unfortunately, it's kind of on brand for what some of these games have been, especially under Sam Pittman the past few years.
Yeah, exactly. Like you mentioned, that one possession there, Jaylen Brown almost had it. But, like you mentioned, the defense, they didn't keep them in this, but it mainly was the offense doing that. What did you see from Taylen Green tonight? I know he was banged up there a little bit late into the game, having to nurse look like a little bit of cramping there in one of his hamstrings.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's always about the progression that you make from the previous year. And the whole thing with Taylen Green has always been about year 2 under Bobby Petrino. Well, he looked good in game 1 and game 2, but considering the opponents, nobody was really overly impressed. It was a matter of, okay, what are you going to do on the road, hostile environment in the SEC? I think he answered the call. He wasn't perfect by any stretch. There were some throws that he missed. There were some guys that he could have hit for touchdowns that he missed. But the grit, the ability, the ways that he was able to win with the legs and a lot of these plays and keep these drives alive, 3rd and longs, you're not even anywhere close to being in this game if it wasn't for Taylen Green. He did everything he could. And I think that you were seeing there at the very end coming up with some big clutch plays. But, again, it's unfortunate for Jaylen Brown to have that fumble happen. But I still believe that there are opportunities that's going to be happening as the season goes on. But I feel great about Taylen Green. I feel confident in him. I feel confident of what he could do, especially in some of these close SEC games.
Now, the defense was probably one of the bigger stories of this game, on giving up over 475 total yards, 350 of those coming from in the air. They gave up some big explosive plays, but Sam Pittman also talked about it in his presser following the game, that it was the penalties that the defense was getting. Now, what were you seeing from there?
Yeah, it was just frustrating because, listen, I think everybody knew going into this year this defense was going to not have the depth, especially on the defensive line, that is needed to compete at a high level. But it just felt like whatever Ole Miss wanted to do, they were able to do. And it's one thing to be able to go up against a high-quality quarterback that's been around for a long time and you know is really good, and you're going to have to do the things that you need to do to try to slow him down. But it's another thing to where you're given a situation where you have a backup quarterback coming in who hasn't taken any real meaningful snaps as the starting quarterback for Ole Miss, and he comes out and he looks like a Heisman Trophy winner. That's got to be frustrating. I understand that Sam Pittman's prepared for both quarterbacks, as he said in his press conference. I get it. But you made him look like Jackson Dart. You made him look like a Matt Corral. You made him look like a quarterback that everyone's going to start talking about this week in the SEC is like, man, is this guy the Heisman? Why they even play Simmons? There's no contest in this. And so that's a really disappointing thing. It's one thing to give up big plays or if you had Ole Miss making great plays, but there were just some very basic breakdowns that Arkansas had defensively. Penalties was obviously a very frustrating thing. Guys being wide open. There was just no excuse, no reason for it. Very frustrating to see. But overall, again, you got to get better from this. No one's feeling sorry for you. You got Memphis coming up. You're going to have to make some adjustments, but definitely disappointing to see that type of defensive performance tonight.
Yeah, I don't know if you can mention Jackson Dart to these Razorback fans, especially what he was able to do against them last year. And it kind of almost mirrored what Trinidad did today, a little bit what he did with what Dart did against them here at Razorback Stadium. Now, you mentioned also, Simmons being banged up a little bit, but we did see him come into the game. What did you see from him? He seemed like he was limping a little bit there, but still was able to run on the Hogs right there in the red zone.
I mean, that kind of just sums it up. I mean, even the guy that is in pain, and he's not 100%, and he's obviously banged up, he comes in and he still scores on you. I mean, it was just demoralizing. And if you're a Razorback defensive player, you got to really look inward. And I think Travis Williams, I think he's a really good defensive coordinator. And I know Lane Kiffin's a great offensive coach. But it just seemed like no matter what you did, no matter what Ole Miss was doing, whether it was with wide receivers or with running backs, starting quarterback, backup quarterback, injured quarterback, did not matter. They were able to find ways to get into the end zone and be effective. So if it was a game plan, if it was just simple execution, if it was effort, whatever the case may be, it just really had to be frustrating in that locker room and dealing with you didn't know what to do. You just had to keep dealing with it, had to keep going out there and playing. But no matter what they wanted to do, they did it. And so you got to give credit to Ole Miss. You got to give credit to Lane Kiffin. But it's just, you've really got to wonder about this defense going forward and if they're going to be able to stop anybody, because they're going to be going up against some really good offenses in the SEC this year.
Exactly. Now, let's try to speak positively, because obviously the offense kept them into this one. What were you seeing from them offensively? I mean, obviously, Mike Washington getting in on the action quite a bit, getting himself a touchdown today, too.
Yeah, I mean, the offense, it looked like a quintessential Bobby Petrino type of offense, because you want to have the balance. You want to be able to have guys that are utilizing their strengths and balancing it. A lot of these wide receivers, tight ends getting involved into the passing game, it was pretty balanced across the board. It wasn't like Taylon Green was having to throw to one guy every time. He was throwing to guys out of the backfield. He was throwing to tight ends. He was throwing to the wide receivers. I think Mike Washington had a really nice game, but also Taylon, he was able to do things with his legs, had over 100 yards rushing once again. But the one thing to me that really was the most impressive thing, and I don't know if people can really, maybe give the credit where credit is due, the Razorback offensive line and pass protection did outstanding tonight. I mean, to me, it was one of the best performances I've seen by a Razorback offensive protection from the passing standpoint in quite some time. I mean, listen, you're going to be going up against a good SEC defensive front, and you know that Taylon Green can beat guys with his legs, but you still want to give him time. There were so many occasions where Taylon Green had all the time in the world, and that's what you want to have in your quarterback, because it's one thing if he's running for his life every time and his confidence starts getting shot, but he had time. He had plenty of opportunities to let those plays develop, and that's how he was able to make his reads, go through it all, find the guys that he wanted to hit, and move on from there and go forward. So to me, I think the offensive line deserves a ton of credit in the job that they did. You're always suspect because they had to replace so many guys from last year, but overall, I think the offensive line, I mean, everybody was great on the offense, but the offensive line, it starts there. If they didn't have the performance they did today, Taylon Green isn't able to have his performance, so I got to give them a huge shout out for that.
Exactly, and Sam Pittman did the same in his postgame, giving the O-line a lot of praise. But when we come back, we're going to bring in Tyler Cass down in Little Rock to talk more about the Hogs and what could have been. Welcome back to Hog Zone with Locked On Razorbacks. I'm Robyn Hearn here, and John Nabors also joining us from Mississippi. And it's time to also bring in THB 11 Sports Director Tyler Cass live in Little Rock. Guys, We've talked about it in the first part of the show. This was another heartbreak for the Hogs. Those one possession games just killing them.
Yeah, look, it's the halfway point here, I guess, between Fayetteville and Oxford. I'll take it. It's heartbreak, and it's in a way, what makes it more heartbreaking, as John and Robyn were talking about in that first segment, is that we keep seeing it. They keep breaking your heart in so much of the same way. And when you do something over and over again, as we know, what's the definition of insanity? Just keep trying it. Yeah, and I wanted to highlight, we talked about how awful the defense looked for most of the game, how good Talon and the offensive line looked. I want to talk a little bit about some coaching decisions. It started with that very first Arkansas drive. In Ole Miss territory, you're clicking till you're not, a 4th and short with a freshman kicker on the road for his first SEC night game, and Sam Pittman elects to kick a field goal, a 50-plus yard field goal, rather than go for it in 4th and short. In a vacuum, I can understand why that's a decision he'd make. It's not one that I would make, but I tend to be more aggressive than most coaches, and that's probably why I'm not a coach. I'm just a guy who sits here and talks. But a 4th and a couple yards in a game where historically and this year, when you know what you have, is going to be decided by touchdowns, not field goals, I would like to see him go for it. And at the end of the first half, what do we see? A 3-point difference, and that was a missed field goal. If Arkansas had gone for it and not picked up the yardage, it's the exact same amount of points on the board, 0. They go for it and they get it. You got a chance at a touchdown. That was what was going to win them this game, was touchdowns, not field goals. Then skip ahead to the end of the first half. Arkansas driving, final minutes. Talon Green picks up that nice 3rd down to get a 1st and goal from inside the 10 with just under 90 seconds left to play in the half. At that point, Bobby Petrino's up in the box this year. I know he's in Talon's ear. Someone's got to tell Talon, hey, slow down. Yeah, obviously you want to go, you want to score, and maybe that was the thought process, was just go, 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 score. But big picture in that game, you want to make that next Ole Miss possession as quick as you possibly can. You're 5 yards away. You are 1st and goal from about the 5-yard line. You should be able to punch it in the next minute and a half, no questions asked. Run some of that play clock. Burn 20 seconds. Get down to under a minute at least before you run a play. Instead, Arkansas hurried up to the line. Talon Green snapped the ball with over 20 seconds left on the play clock and scored right away. That's great. Scoring a touchdown, obviously, the best thing you can do as an offense. But that exact same play, if they had just run the play clock down to 20 more seconds, Ole Miss is getting the ball back with a lot less time to work with. Instead, Ole Miss got it with a little over a minute and promptly drove into field goal range. And honestly, it felt lucky that they didn't have another 15 seconds because it would have been a touchdown. Ole Miss had 20 to 30 seconds less to work with. We don't know if they end up getting that field goal. We're talking about a tie game at halftime. And in these one-score games, as we've seen over and over again over the last 5 years for the Razorbacks, it's going to come down to those little itty-bitty coaching decisions. It's going to come down to one score, and that's at least 2 examples in the first half where the Razorbacks kind of ripped themselves off of one score, be it a missed field goal when you had a 4th and short, or giving Ole Miss enough time to get into field goal range. So, again, there are adjustments that need to be made across the board. We knew this was going to be difficult. Arkansas didn't come into this game as a favorite. They were an underdog across the board. Now, they were a popular underdog pick. They were a team that, even national pundits were picking to make the upset. But this was still a game that at least Vegas didn't expect them to win. You had a chance, and it's just those little things that pile up and add up and end up in another one-score loss.
Yeah, it just seems like it's the Achilles heel for this Razorback team. Now, Tyler, we talked a little bit about what Ole Miss was able to do successfully. Me and John did. Now, what did you see from them besides their quarterback obviously doing amazing things, and he wasn't even in the SEC last year?
Yeah, I mean, not that he wasn't in the SEC last year. He wasn't in Division I last year. And I looked up the stats. He was at Ferris State, the best of the best in Division II, and he actually played a localized opponent, someone else that we know. They played Harding. Again, another D2 giant up in Searcy, Harding University. They won the national championship a couple years ago. They lost to Ferris State and Trinidad Chambliss last year in a game where they held him to under 150 yards passing. He passed for 200 more yards against the Arkansas Razorback defense than he did the Harding Bison's defense. And again, shout out to Harding, a great Division II team. And yes, he has better weapons with him at Ole Miss, that's for sure. But, I mean, if you watch the broadcast, you know we only joined Ole Miss a few months ago. It was kind of everything lining up for Arkansas to go on the road and steal an SEC game, and the defense just kind of stopped them from doing that. Who knows? If they had run the Harding Bison's defense out there, maybe they were able to stop Trinidad Chambly a little better. We'll never know. Of course, the Harding offense would have just, run the ball 500 times, and who knows how that would have gone. But it's just the frustrating thing, and we feel like a broken record, not just tonight, but over the last 10 years, is even when everything kind of lined up perfectly for Arkansas, even when they finally get the last defensive stop, even when there's a backup quarterback in the game, they can't quite get over that hump. And it's frustrating. I'm sure no one is more frustrated than the people inside that locker room. I was able to listen to the first 10 minutes or so of Sam Pittman's press conference, and he sounded frustrated. I mean, he sounded down. He sounded a little dejected. I would not call it an energetic post-game, but there was definitely a focus in his voice as well. I mean, he didn't sugarcoat it, especially with the defense, about how things need to get better. We're looking at Memphis next week, and then Notre Dame, and then really the heart of the SEC schedule. So the easy part is out of the way. You got your 2 easy wins. Here on out, especially one half of the ball doesn't improve, it could be a long season. Or it gets better. The offense looks great. Taylor Green wins a Heisman, and hey, we're talking about a little bump in the road. But based on everything we've seen, the first 3 games, the last 5 years, that would have to go kind of against character for us to see that kind of improvement. But hey, fingers always crossed over here.
Yeah, anything can happen, especially in college football. Now, I want to bring John back in here real quickly. And like you mentioned, Sam Pittman in his presser, he talked a little bit about the defense, and he said that it was really the communication. John, did you notice anything whenever you're watching the game, maybe the communication looked off to you, especially with the secondary?
Yeah, because there were so many players that were wide open. Just to be honest. I mean, I know that this SEC defense of Arkansas isn't one of the best or was considered to be the best, but whenever there's that many breakdowns and having the type of breakdowns where it's basic things, it really comes down to communication. I remember very fondly in that second quarter, there was a touchdown that they hit a wide receiver in the back of the end zone for Ole Miss, and he was so wide open that you were just looking at it. I had to watch the replay 2 or 3 times, and it was amazing just to see how they were talking before the play, but then people just weren't in their spot. They weren't where they were supposed to be, and then afterwards there were conversations that were being had. And so they started kind of talking about that. I think it got better in certain situations, but anytime you have that many breakdowns and that many guys running wide open, making plays, and just seems like it's not getting any better. And it wasn't even just deep passes. It was medium passes, short passes, out of the backfield. It didn't really matter. There was way too many guys that were wide open and nobody around for Arkansas, and that was a simple communication problem.
Well, hopefully they can get that fixed, especially for next week. And speaking of Notre Dame, they just lost to A&M 41-40. So that's definitely going to be something to see because the Hogs take on both of those teams later on. Now, Tyler, bringing you back in for one more second here. What are you seeing positively with the Hogs, especially what they were able to put on the field tonight?
We've talked at length about Taylor Green, the offense, Mike Washington, how much Taylor's been able to kind of spread the ball out. So I won't go too much on that. I'll go more intangibles. I did really like the fact that Arkansas still had a shot. And not only had a shot, but was marching down the field. The defense, as much as I've maligned them, and everyone's going to, both tonight and in the days to come, they got to stop when they desperately needed one. Sure, it would have been nice to get more throughout the game, but in the fourth quarter, when Arkansas got the score to pull them within one score, and the whole game came down to one Ole Miss drive. Arkansas defense got the stop. Arkansas's offense was driving. And then the fumble. And that's the problem with Arkansas, of course, is you almost always get the and then that, or the but, or the however. But everything up to that fumble in the fourth quarter, you love to see the fight in the team, the not quitting. Because I think from the fan base perspective, from media perspective, it really did kind of feel like, man, whoever gets a 2-score lead first is going to coast. Ole Miss got that 2-score lead. Arkansas didn't let them coast. The Hogs defense did just enough to get them back in a position where they could have tied or taken the lead, and then, of course, a fumble. So I will give Arkansas that. Obviously, a great offensive performance, but the defense did come through at least once in the fourth quarter, and you didn't see this team quit. So hopefully now they carry that forward, and we don't see any quit the rest of the way.
Well, we'll definitely have to see more of that coming up. We'll break down the Hogs a little bit more and kind of look into next week when they're on the road at Memphis. We're going to close out here just talking a little bit more about the Hogs and what they were able to do and what they weren't able to do. Really was the defense here as one of the parts of this Achilles heel, and then obviously at the very end there as the Hogs were inching there in the red zone, trying to get something done, and it just came down to that one possession, as always with the Hogs. So hopefully they get something going next week against Memphis. They get out of SEC play for the next 2 weeks, and maybe that's a good thing for them, especially with Notre Dame coming here to Razorback Stadium at the end of the month. When the Fighting Irish actually just lost to Texas A&M 41-40, so we'll see what will happen there. And they'll go on to the road at Memphis. That one is scheduled for 11 a.m. Don't know where exactly that game will be on, but it'll either be on ABC, ESPN, or ESPN2. And can't wait to see what the Hogs are able to do. Hopefully they can bounce back, and especially when Taylon Green puts up the numbers that he put up this week. Maybe he'll just be able to do the same in Memphis, and that's where the Razorbacks won last year in the Liberty Bowl against Texas Tech. So hopefully they can put on another show in a stadium that they are very, very comfortable with. So thank you guys so much for watching Hog Zone with Locked On Razorbacks. You can watch Locked On Razorbacks with John Nabors 5 days a week on the 5 News Plus and THB 11 plus smart TV apps. And we'll see you right back here next week for some more Hog Zone. Good night.